Ellie Fields. I lead the product and engineering team here at Salesloft. I've been here for a few years, and I've been watching this transformation happen. And I want to tell you a little bit about it today. The industry of sales is at a pivotal moment. It's at a pivotal moment because sales is coming out of the dark age and being data-informed, tech-enabled, AI-enabled. Exceptional one-off strategies don't work anymore. Just trying to get the heroics at the end of the quarter don't work anymore. And just to illustrate that, a still from Glenn Ross, this is how sales used to be done. But in fact, it's still done this way in large part. Now you can see some technology in this slide, which is why I like it. You've got the blackboard, right? So this is how you track your deals and prioritize things. You've got the Rolodex, you've got the rotary phone, and we may be using cell phones these days and a CRM to track contacts. But so much of sales is still done this way, with people just trying to figure it out and trying to figure out what's happening and what to do next and what's effective. And it's time that that changed. This isn't just an evolution. This is a revolution in sales technology. And it's a revolution partly because of the power of AI. Technology has enabled a lot in sales, but in some ways it's made the problem worse by giving people too many places to go to get too much information. AI is a technology that can help bring all of that together, this crazy world that sellers live in with all those buyer signals and all that intent, and bring it into one place and help them figure out what is effective, what action to take, what actually drives outcomes. And that's never been possible in sales before. We're seeing it now with customers who are using Rhythm, and we are building on it in our vision that we're showing you today. Now, when you talk about AI, I believe you always have to ask three questions, and these are questions that we actually ask in our product process as we build product. The questions are, what can you automate? What's uniquely human, and where can you augment? When you think about automation, you should think about things that humans are bad at or hate to do, like typing in a bunch of data, or moving data from one place to another, or reading back through a lot of data to figure out what happened. Those are things that humans shouldn't be doing, and technology can do for us these days. Checking 10 inboxes is a bad use of a human. There are good uses of humans, and ostensibly you hire humans into sales because you think that sales is a human endeavor. And we believe it is too, because sellers are connecting with buyers when they're doing a good job. They're empathizing. They're helping sellers navigate politically. They're helping buyers deal with a lot of information coming at them so they can actually understand what they're trying to achieve and whether or not they're going to get there. They're building trust and credibility. These are things that you really want a human being to do. And if they're doing those, I believe that you can augment that with technology. Replace the administrative work that you don't need someone to do, and then help the people write emails if you do want them to engage with buyers. Help them get the product information they need in the moment they need it, or any other kind of information. Help them collaborate. Help them run sales plays to get to repeatability and consistency without having to read an email and then go somewhere else to do all the things that the email said. These are ways that we can augment the humanness in selling so that sellers can spend more time with buyers. At Salesloft, we've been pioneering AI for years, and we've deployed AI models throughout the entire product, many of which you may not know are there because we put them in the workflow. We believe that AI has to be in the workflow to add value. It has to be where you're working to bring the right context and the data right into the moment. And we've been doing this through things like seniority and hot leads. Last year, we shipped Rhythm, which is a prioritization engine, an AI-driven prioritization engine that looks across all the incoming signals in your business and helps you understand the most important action to take. And of course, we're using generative AI because it is a transformative technology that makes so many things that were hard easier, like writing that cold email. When we deploy AI, you'll see us put it in the workflow. You'll see us root it in value. We don't build demoware. There's a lot of flash out there. That's great. We build AI that helps you take action to get to outcomes. And you'll see that in our vision for ARC. We also make sure that it's explainable because explainability drives trust. For experienced sellers, they won't use AI, and nor should they, unless they know what it's doing, and when they need to, can get into the loop, can be a human in the loop. And for newer sellers, explainability can help build intuition, can help teach them about the business that they're in. So AI is very powerful, but you have to let humans know what it's doing. Salesloft is the only vendor with a true revenue orchestration platform. It's a platform that covers all the core selling jobs, right? Instead of forecasting being a process of gathering all the information, it actually becomes a process of prioritizing. Structured workflows that help you stay on track when you're prospecting. Coaching support for managers. All the things that a sales team does are within Salesloft. And they're surrounded by Rhythm, this AI-powered orchestration engine, so that sellers aren't spending their time thinking about how to do this or how to do that, but they're able to just take the next action with the context they need in the moment. I've talked a bit about Rhythm. You heard David mention it too. We've been watching our customers use Rhythm, and the results have really been astounding. You see some of them on these slides, on this slide here. Productivity has gone up, which makes sense because when you take that administrative work off of a seller, of course they can do more with the buyer. They can engage more with the buyer, which is what you want your sellers to be doing. But we also see shorter deal cycles, higher win rates, and even higher ASPs. And this makes sense because when a seller is more focused on the buyer, is more responsive, they can help progress that deal faster. And these are the outcomes that we are driving towards. We are not trying to help you do more activity. We're not trying to help you whip your sellers into shape. We're trying to help sellers engage with buyers to get to outcomes. And because we know that there are entire teams around those sellers, this software has to be collaborative. And that's what we see with Rhythm. Now, I mentioned that we are at an inflection point. This is a transformational moment in our industry because we're getting not only to enabling sellers with data and technology, but actually optimizing selling by tracking what people are doing, what signals are coming in, looking at whether it works, and then enabling the ability to orchestrate that action across an entire selling team. Not just one-off seller to seller, but orchestrate action so that you can know what your sales team is doing and know that it's working. Now, one of the great things about AI is that it can be everywhere. But one of the bad things about it is it can be everywhere and it can be bad if it's not built on a great foundation of data. So I'm going to talk a little bit about data, and to do that, I'm going to actually back up to what the buying journey looks like. Now, if you're a buyer in a sales cycle, you see one journey. You might start on the website, you might end up with a seller, but the reality is that we know most buyers are actually bouncing around between the seller and the digital experience. And we know that buyers are doing a lot of research before they get to a seller. But we also know that most buyers think that their experience buying is pretty poor. Actually, less than half actually like the experience of buying or think that it's a positive experience. So that's what's happening with the buyers. But let's talk about the sellers. Life's not great for them either. In the last decade or two, we threw a ton of technology at them. And yes, now they can get more buying signals, but they've had to go from screen to screen to screen to inbox with an administrative task here and something they have to type in over there. And in fact, Forrester has found that sellers have been able to spend less time with buyers than they used to, down to about 25% of their time, simply because of all this administrative tasks. So this is a world that isn't working for either one. And if you look at that buyer journey and you say, okay, what's actually happening with the buyer? They are going to the website. They're coming into sales. They're bringing new members of the buying team in. All of this is happening. And if we look at it just in the view of what happens between a human and the buyer, we're going to miss the potential of AI. We're going to miss the potential of all these digital experiences. Not to replace the seller, because again, we believe that selling is fundamentally a human endeavor, but to augment the seller, to help the seller, to do those things the seller doesn't need to do, like giving answers in a chat experience. As you heard David mention, this is one of the reasons that we bought Drift, partly because we saw all the signals coming into Rhythm from marketing platforms. And first-party ones like websites are so powerful to begin the conversation on a buying journey. We thought we wanted to bring that in-house so that we could create some really unique workflows. Drift has recently launched Bionic Chatbots, which is an AI-powered chat based on a customer's website, or any other ingested material that gives free-form AI-assisted answers to buyers. Now, this is great because one of the worst uses of a human being is to be a product catalog or to memorize a website. That's not what you want sellers doing. An AI-based chatbot can do that. But what's really great about this is that when you think about conversational AI, it doesn't just have to live in a chat bot on the website. It can actually be the foundation of great email responses. It can actually help a seller during a live conversation, and that's part of our vision for that conversational AI. There are also workflows that are really powerful when you incorporate buyer intent and you bridge this digital and sales-led gap and sales-led world. We are shipping one of these workflows in a couple of months. And this is a workflow that looks at a chat that happens on a website in a drift bot, and then takes that signal, qualifies it, and if qualified, sends to a seller. So the seller gets an action in rhythm that says, hey, the CIO of a legit company was on your website asking about security. Please follow up with them. We can actually generate the email based on that buyer and based on the intent. And this is when you really get into augmentation of sellers. That seller still needs to reach out, still needs to build trust, still needs to start to understand what's happening with that company. But we've started to build a history of this opportunity in this account that begins with the first digital interaction and enables the seller to use that interaction to have a better first conversation. That's going to come straight into rhythm because we believe rhythm is the single point of action for sellers. You heard David talk about this. It's so important that sellers can spend their time engaging with buyers, not trying to figure out what to do next. I've mentioned data a few times, and some of you may know I'm a giant data geek, and I'm proud of that. But I can tell you that AI really does need a foundation in data. And in fact, any kind of sales orchestration, revenue orchestration needs a foundation in data. Because B2B buying cycles can span months. Account relationships can span years. And you need to be able to bring all the information, all the activity, all the intent into one place so that you can use it in the moment of action. We have a data model that is holistic and powerful. It crosses channels. So we don't care if you're talking to your buyer in email or on a Zoom call or in that chat bot. We're bringing all of that in. We're actually routing it through the people in a deal because associations are one of the most powerful things in data. We know that sales has certain concepts like deal risks and competitors and objections. So we're bringing that in and using AI to help us distill that information based on all the activity here. And of course, we're looking at what sellers are doing, what action they're taking, which, by the way, nobody's ever been able to really know what action a large sales force is taking. We kind of guess that, we told sellers to do a thing, so they're doing it, but we never really know. Now we can know. We can bring all that together and then look at the outcomes that usually live in the CRM, like was the deal won and how big was it and how long did it take? And we can associate all that data so that we can start to say, hey, when you get a signal in from G2 or Vidyard or User Gems, that signal is much more likely to convert than for a deal that didn't have that signal. We can actually associate that data, we can correlate that and help you understand what activity is driving outcomes, what kinds of signals are high value signals. And we'll put that right back into the AI in Conductor AI so that we're prioritizing the right actions for sellers. Now, prior to Salesloft, I was at Tableau for many years, and I saw hundreds of customers try to build this kind of model. But it's really difficult because not only is the data huge, but as soon as you start to build this model, the buying environment changes, your sales team changes, the plays you're running change. So this model has to be very adapted. We have built this model. And I can tell you for a single enterprise customer, we see numbers like 3 million contacts, 1.5 million accounts, 300,000 opportunities, 4,000 conversations. That is a lot of data. And to build this on your own, you need teams of data engineers. But we are building it because it underlies our revenue orchestration platform that helps you take the right action with all this data. This is what end-to-end revenue orchestration looks like. It starts with everything that's happening in the sales cycle. coming into a data platform that makes those associations for you so you don't have to. On top of that, we can start to understand what deal gaps matter, what signals matter, what actions matter. And then we can guide the action of the sales team in an orchestrated way through plays and rhythm. And then finally, look at the outcomes and see what's working, what's not. This is how you optimize a revenue team. This is how you actually get to that consistency and repeatability. Now, this is our vision, but it's not just vision. We are building it now. And to show you what this looks like, I'm pleased to welcome Executive Vice President of Product, Frank Daly.
So it's great to see all of you. I'm very excited to talk about what we're going to get into today. And what we're going to talk about is how we're going to help you learn from and act on your data. And what you've heard over and over again so far today between David and Ellie is the word action. Because at the end of the day, life moves forward when you take action. That is the simple truth. And what we're going to walk through today is a revolutionary way to learn from and act on your data. No more charts and reports that go nowhere. We're going to help you actually take action on the things that matter. In a second, I'm going to walk through that. But before I do, I want to talk to you about a category of solutions that we call revenue intelligence. Now, almost every single revenue team that I meet with uses some form of revenue intelligence today. And the simple truth is that it is not working. It's not. And how do I know that? Well, for almost a decade now, revenue intelligence providers have made a lot of promises. And that has led to millions and millions of dollars getting invested in solutions. And yet at the end of the day, what do we see? Revenue teams are found wanting. And that's because it turns out when revenue intelligence solutions were designed, they incorporated 3 critical points of failure in the design. They literally designed failure into the product. Failure point 1, they're almost always based on siloed data. And what that means is a revenue operations team has to start acting like data scientists to connect the dots from one data set to the next to try to get a holistic picture of what's actually going on. Failure point 2, they have lots of lovely charts and graphs, and I promise you they are gorgeous. And they demo really well. They do. The problem is they don't actually answer questions you have. They just tell you things about the data that they can see. And that means your team is forced to try to find context and meaning from something that isn't even answering a question that matters to you. And finally, third, they don't tie off to action. And we all know that in a revenue organization, insight without action is meaningless. So it should not surprise us that the failure of revenue intelligence manifested last year in a study that Gartner did. So this number brought to us by our friends at Gartner is the percentage of revenue leaders that believe their analytics drive meaningful performance outcomes. So let's let that sink in for a second. 3%. 3%. Now, my friends, I do not know what you call something that is worse than an F-, but I promise you it is that. That is horrible. So when I see a number like that, when our product teams see a number like that, we have questions. And so we go to the source. And that source is conversations with people just like you. And we've had hundreds of them. And they have all centered around the same failure point. So I'll share an example from one I had recently. I was speaking to a CRO. She had just made yet another investment in revenue intelligence after spending over 6 figures on a competitor's conversation intelligence product. And so I had a lot of questions about this because she'd spent a bunch of money and then switched to another provider. And I asked her, what led to that? How are you using this solution? How's it driving day-to-day outcomes for you? And I will never forget what she told me. The second I asked that question, she made a face, and it's the kind of face that my wife makes when I forget something important. It's the thing you do not want to see. And I love my wife, by the way. She looked at me and she had this exasperated look on her face, and she said, you know, I go into this thing and it's telling me stuff like seller A pauses for 10 seconds after asking a question on a call. And seller B, they pause for 15 seconds. She said, what am I supposed to do with that? If you cannot tell me that one is better than the other, that is just noise. And what's worse, that causes confusion on my management team because we do not know if we should coach to that. Noise. Despite millions and millions of dollars invested, noise. And so that reminds me of a quote by famous management theorist Chris Argyris. He taught at both Harvard and Yale. We like to call that the double. And he said, knowledge upon which action cannot be taken is barely worth having. And I want you to take that home. Because the simple truth is that today you are drowning in charts, graphs, and data tables. But instead of lighting the way to success, they are leaving you in the dark. Because that is not what you want. And that is absolutely not what you need. What you need are insights. And I mean real insights. And if you take only one thing away from what I talk about today, I want you to take this. A real insight, not what you have been sold, a real insight does two things. Number one, it has to tell you what drives outcomes. And I mean things like meetings booked, deals progressed from stage to stage, why your deals close, why revenue renews. Those are outcomes. If it cannot tell you what drives an outcome, it is not an insight. And second, it has to tell you the specific action to take to deliver that outcome. If it cannot tell you which action to take to deliver the outcome, it is not an insight. And that is not what you have gotten. But you're about to, because what you want looks a heck of a lot more like this. Every single one of the things that you see here is money in the bank. You act on this, it drives an actual outcome. And what I want you to notice here is we're doing it for multiple members of your revenue team, because revenue is a team sport. You heard David talk about that. You've heard Ellie talk about that. This is what you want, and it is not what you have been given. And this is what we're going to bring to you. Because the next revolution in revenue is driving consistency and repeatability across your team every single day. And that requires real, actionable insights. And to do that, I'm excited to introduce you to Salesloft Arc, our next generation insights engine for revenue teams. Just as we modernized sales action with rhythm, we're going to modernize sales insight with Arc. And when you put Arc and rhythm together, we can bridge insight to action to outcome in a way that no one else can. Now, it would be remiss if I did not show you how this works. So when you think about Arc, what I want you to think about is this. It is your revenue command center. You are finally going to get a single place to see your entire revenue motion. And I'm talking about from first touch to renewal to expansion. Because at the end of the day, time is the most scarce resource in a revenue organization. You need to know what to do and why to do it and for exactly which thing. You do not have time to go sifting through data. You need to know exactly where to spend your time. And that's exactly what we're going to do for you here. So you're going to get a holistic view here. But the key is, it's not just about showing you the end-to-end, it's showing you where your time should go. So these insights, they are actionable and they tie directly to what drives revenue for you. And I want to be very specific here. What drives revenue for you? This is not one size fits all. We are building this to adjust to your business. And not just your business globally, your business by segment and by team. Because that is what you actually need. Now, behind the scenes, we have been building to be able to do this for years. To make this happen, we're going to bring in more signals and richer data about your business. And what that means is we will be pulling in new unstructured types of data like call recordings, emails, text messages, as well as more account information, stage-to-stage progression rates, close rates, and more. And all of that information is going to get ingested by purpose-built AI models. And these AI models are designed, as I mentioned, for your business. We are tailoring for you because what you do is not the same across the room. If you sell pharmaceuticals, you have a very different sales cycle to someone that is selling enterprise software. Those are different businesses. And by the way, I know that for sure. I've been in enterprise software my entire career. My dad spent 40 years selling pharmaceuticals. I promise you, they're very different. So you need advice that is tailored to your business. And that is what we're going to give you here. Now, here's how we're going to bring this all together for you. So we've talked a little bit about Rhythm today. So Rhythm today brings in signals from partners and other people across the ecosystem, as well as all of the activities that we can see. And then it ranks and prioritizes all of those signals using our proprietary Conductor AI model. That model produces a prioritized list of action for your sellers. That means each seller on the team knows exactly what they should do to be more successful. With Arc, in our next generation insights, we are taking this to the next level. We are giving you a machine to get better every single day. The way I like to think of this myself is I call it a winning machine. And that is a perpetually improving revenue organization where each day we ingest more data, we learn from it, and we immediately give you better recommendations because of that. And we adapt to the changes you are seeing in your market. That is what you need to be successful today, and that is what we are going to do for you. So I could stop here, but I think it'd be a lot more fun to actually show you what this is going to look like. So I'm going to do a demo up here. We're going to walk through my demo skills here. So I'm in RevOps now. I'm going to put my RevOps hat on. I will start my day by coming into Arc. So as you can see, I'm in Arc here. It's giving me a single view of my entire revenue motion. And that's important, again, because when I'm in revenue operations, I need to know exactly where to go. I need to know exactly which part of the process is the part of the process that needs my attention. So you'll notice here, I've got prospecting and closing up, but it's not enough to give you the data. No one has time to go sift through this stuff. I've had to do this in the past personally, and by the way, I did not like being a junior data scientist. What I wanted to do is just figure out how we were going to grow revenue. I did not want to sift through all of the data to get there. Arc is going to do that for you. We're going to pull it all into one place, all the types of data that you need, so you're not having to connect the dots, and then we're going to pull the insights out. So you'll notice we'll start with our prospecting phase. It's saying, hey, there's an area I need to pay attention to because it looks like we are behind the pace. Our trend line is not as good as it was in a prior quarter. So let's dig in and find out why. So if I click through here, it's going to pull me in, and it's going to tell me that the reason we're behind is not that everyone in the revenue organization is off. It's that I have 3 specific teams that are not prospecting enough. Now, I have had to figure out things like this in the past, and it was a pain in the butt. And the problem is, in the old world, in the world before this product, you would then have to go meet with all of the managers, reinforce it multiple times, probably talk to a director or a VP if you have that level as well, and then you have to hope that they're actually going to do what you need them to do. While I would say you'll still maybe want to have one of those conversations, let me show you how we're going to make that go away. So I can come in here, it's suggesting that I enable a play for these teams. So a play, if you're not familiar with Salesloft, is just something that allows you to programmatically help your sellers drive the right action. So I can come in here, you'll notice the signal says, in this case, hey, when pipeline coverage is below target for one of my sellers, we target 3x in this particular business. For Q4, I need them to schedule more prospecting time. Now for this business, let's say we're on a shorter sales cycle, it's 90 days, that's gonna work for you. If you have a longer sales cycle, we'll of course have them prospect much earlier to make sure that the future quarters are gonna be where they need to be. So what's the action here? The action is we're going to suggest to the seller, in this case, to block time. But we're not gonna stop there. The second that time is blocked on their calendar, we are going to suggest accounts and contacts to prospect at that time. We want to make the game as easy as possible for the seller. So I'm going to come in here. I said, hey, suggest prospecting time, add the play. It's now in my list. And as a seller, this is what I'm going to see. And this is the key. We are linking insight to action here. Insight without action is meaningless. It is meaningless. It is not enough to just know what to do. You have to actually do it. And this is how you're gonna make that happen. So as a seller, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna notice that it's telling me I need to prospect, but it's not just telling me I need to prospect, it's telling me why. My coverage is low. And I'm gonna miss the next quarter, and it turns out I like making quota, so this is probably a good recommendation. So if I click through here, you'll notice it's gonna bring me to my pipeline to kind of reinforce that point from our Fabulous Deals product. If I'm unsure if I like this prospecting block, it'll pull up my calendar. I might notice that, hey, my DM just dropped a meeting there, so I can rearrange it to go from 1 to 3 instead of 3 to 5. I'll hit block time. We will put that time on the calendar. And by the way, here's the important thing for you. We will report on who did this and who didn't. And that is critical for 2 reasons. It's gonna help your managers reinforce the right behaviors. And second, we report on the outcomes. So you can go back to the sellers and you can talk to people who did the thing that you wanted and reinforce to the people that didn't why that worked. And that is critical. Humans always want to know why. All right, so let's say we're gonna work on my closing phase. It turns out in stage 2, so we call that validation in this particular business, the way the product works, sidebar, we're gonna pull in your stages. So imagine your sales stage names here. So we're gonna pull that in and it's gonna tell me, it turns out our win rates go up by 35% if we engage with a decision maker at this point in the process. So that's a critical thing to know. Now let's make it happen programmatically. So if I come in here, I'm gonna find out not only do our win rates go up by 35%, it turns out we have $1.2 million worth of opportunities sitting in stage 2 right now where we have not engaged with the decision maker. So how do we make that happen now? So I'm gonna go in here, I'll say, hey, let's enable our decision maker play. You'll notice when I scroll down here, you can kind of see my mouse, my cursor. It's got the signal. It says deals in stage 2 where no decision maker has been engaged. In a few minutes, Ellie's gonna show you how we're gonna know that. But what I wanna point your attention to is this. This is a multi-step play. Sometimes it's not enough to just have the seller do the action. There are times if you're in enablement or RevOps, I want to go reinforce why, because I think we have a skill gap. So if you look here, I have the opportunity to pull in an enablement resource. So this is where if you're using like a HighSpot or a Seismic, or you have your own training videos that you've made, you can go ahead and embed that right in here. So in this case, I'm going to do that. And in addition, the second that video has been played, an email is teed up for my seller now to engage with the decision maker. So not only am I enforcing the right behavior, I'm building this skill so that they're gonna get better consistently over time because I'm putting this training in their workflow. Now, what we're not gonna do, by the way, is pop that every single time because that would be annoying. We're gonna do it once or twice just to make sure that we've really drilled that in, and then we're gonna continue to reinforce with the right action. So I'm gonna hit add play. You'll notice it comes up on my list here as a seller. Again, bridging insight to action. This is how you get the team to do the things that you know lead to success. It is now in my workflow. I've got two things. I've got the short training video, and I know why it's popping up in my queue. And you'll notice when this email comes up, I am motivating it for the seller. Humans want to know why. You have to tell them why you're asking them to do something. And so as we can see here, it is telling me if I engage with this person, the odds of me winning this deal go up by 35%. This is how you get the org to do the things you need them to do every single day. And that is what we are going to give you. So I am unbelievably excited about this product. I've wanted to build this product for years. We can finally do it. But that is not all that we're doing here. We, in fact, have a pretty awesome spring product launch coming up right now. And to tell you about that, I would like to welcome back up to the stage my friend and yours, Ellie Fields.
Action's what's been missing from sales. And Salesloft owns action. Not just meaningless insights, not just meaningless analytics, but insight that lead to action, that lead to outcomes. We're the only platform that can orchestrate that across an entire sales team. I'm also excited about what's coming in the fall, but I also want to show you what we're about to ship now in the spring. And that has to do with all the conversations you're having with the buyer. I talked about this in terms of chat coming in from the website and sales conversations. Every single one of those is gold. Every single one of them gives you insight into what's going on with that buyer. And we are bringing all of those together in our data platform and then putting experiences on top of that data that help you use those conversations. In our spring launch, we're bringing out a number of different capabilities that sit on top of not just conversations you have in Zoom or Teams, but any conversation you have with a buyer anywhere. And I'll show you a couple of these. We're adding a prep for meeting workflow. Now, prep for meeting is something that every single seller hates, but they also know they have to do. If you talk to a seller, they'll say things like, I wish I had an hour to prep for every meeting, but I don't. And a lot of times prepping for a meeting and bringing the whole selling team together means putting together a PowerPoint and spending hours doing that. This is a thing you do not want sellers to do. I know sellers do this because in my career, I have been the recipient of many of these PowerPoints. I'm sorry, guys. There's a better way, and AI can help. We are bringing together a prep for meeting workflow that makes all of that manually pulling together data obsolete. I mentioned that associations are some of the most powerful parts of a data model. Well, it doesn't matter if you know what activity is happening if you don't know what opportunity it's associated with. Activity is now being associated to stakeholders, which are being associated to opportunities automatically. So if somebody adds the CIO on a CC on an email or drops them into a meeting, we have those connections to your calendar and your email. We can pull those in and add them to the right opportunity so that you can get the complete picture of what's going on with your buyer or your buying group. We are using AI to capture key conversational moments, pulling them out of the transcript, whether it's a competitor, an objection, a decision criteria, and putting it front and center on every single conversation so that you can skip to those moments and find out what's going on with pricing rather than reviewing the whole conversation. If you had 60 minutes to review the entire thing, you could have just joined the meeting. Key moments help you just focus in on the things that matter. And then finally, we are first in the industry to launch AI-assisted conversation scorecard, a way for managers to look at every single conversation or the ones that matter and start with an AI score and then build on that. I'm going to show you a few of these, what these look like in action, and you will see these coming out in May. Now, I'm starting here in our coaching center. This is live in the product today, and it's one of the places we pull together all the holistic data about what's going on for a particular seller. This is where managers can go to coach their sellers so they don't have to spend all that time pulling it together. They can just get into what's really working for a seller. You can drill into emails, calls, and conversations. I'll go ahead and click into conversations. And now in the conversations, you're going to be able to see trend by score. For this particular seller, how are they doing on various conversations? So we can take a look at that. And then I want to go and look at their unscored conversations because it's time to go ahead and score one. So let me score this next conversation. And you're going to see a panel pop up for the manager. I'm going to choose a discovery template. I know this was a discovery call that Rob most recently had. And we go ahead and click into that. And you'll see that the answers are already filled in for me from AI. They're not only filled in, they're referencing moments in the transcript that I can go back and look at. They're referencing key moments and timestamps so that I don't have to go and watch all of that. But I can go watch those moments and I can change the score if I need to. In fact, I could go and just view the key moments only so that I can use my time most effectively on this call. I can really just dive into those things that matter the most, skip the small talk. Rob's great at small talk, but I don't need to review that. And then I can come down and I can actually go ahead and give feedback to my seller. So even if we don't have time to have a one-on-one, he's getting that feedback in a very proximate way, in a way that helps him go into the rest of his day and sell better right now without waiting for that next one-on-one. So I'm going to go ahead and score that conversation. And then let's see what this looks like for Rob, the sales rep. Well, his manager just scored a conversation. He's going to get that email, and he's going to be able to jump into that scorecard. He's going to get all the AI assists that his manager did. Everybody gets the transparency on the conversation. He can see the key moments. He can add comments. He can see the comments his manager added. And he can review all of those and review the exact moment that his manager was discussing in that call. Now, Rob's been armed with this information. He's got some good coaching from his manager. He's still kind of new here, so he's still trying to figure it out, and that coaching's really helped him. As he looks at his calendar, he sees he has the next meeting with that very same buyer, Gary at Wavelink. And I mentioned that one of the things that you don't want a human to do is go and spend a bunch of time pulling together information. You want people strategizing about the next meeting. You want them collaborating. You don't want them just pulling information in. And so we're adding this prep for meeting workflow that you'll see in your calendar. And that prep for meeting workflow is going to bring Rob all the information about this opportunity. He's going to be able to go look at the contacts on the opportunity itself. He's going to be able to look at the last call, an AI-generated summary, AI-generated action items, and if he needs to, he can go and review a key moment. And in fact, he can go ahead and add notes for his selling team because on this demo, he's going to have a sales engineer and his manager might even join. This is so much better than him spending time pulling together a PowerPoint. And now his selling team is going to get an email saying, hey, here's your prep for the meeting. So if you only have 5 minutes, you can still go in very sharp with all that context, and Rob can transfer what he knows and what he's trying to do with this. But the coaching that Rob got was that he had forgotten to set an agenda for the meeting with his buyers. So there's one more thing that he needs to do before we can close out this. And that is teed up for him in Rhythm, because Rhythm is where you go to see all your most prioritized and important actions. He needs to send an agenda to the buyer. Because when he sends that agenda, his buyer's going to know that they're spending the time on the right things. This email has been auto-generated for Rob, but we want to put the human in the loop so that Rob can give it the once-over and make sure it's working and it's right. The action items were generated by AI and inserted right here, so Rob can go back and tell his buyer that he's addressed those action items. And now when he walks into this meeting this afternoon, they're going to be able to use that time wisely. The buyer's going to get what they expected, and Rob's going to be able to progress this deal. So he goes ahead and sends that agenda to his buyer, and he's set up for a great demo, and he can go on to other actions in his workflow. This is what it looks like when you have holistic data across a platform, and you're using that data to help people take the right action in an orchestrated and repeatable way. Now, I started off by telling you that we're an inflection point in revenue, that the industry is changing, and it's about time. It needs to. We are in the middle of a generational transformation using AI in sales, using data, building workflow for sellers so that it's not a dark art anymore, but sellers get that same enablement from technology that other industries have had for many years. So I'll leave you with 3 questions. One is, where is your organization on this journey? Where do you want to be? And how can we help you get there? I would love to talk with you after the show, as would Frank. We have a few other members of the product team here. Thank you very much for letting us share our vision with you.